Hello, everybody! It's been a few days since my last video, but I have some very good news to report. It's good news for me professionally and good news for me as far as this channel goes. One thing that was taking up a lot of my time, really post-WrestleMania, was my certification exam for the Security Plus. It's a fairly straightforward cybersecurity certification that, to be perfectly honest, I should have gotten when I started in cybersecurity, but doesn't matter. I have it now. And so all the studying, all the preparation I did for the test, passed the exam on Saturday, so I am done with that. So what that means is not only do I get to improve my resume and improve my marketability as a cybersecurity professional, if I want better jobs and raises and things like that, I also have a little bit more time on my hands to make videos. Something that was taking up a lot of my time was prepping for this exam. And actually, it was also eating into my ability to keep up with wrestling, because I have not watched New Japan pretty much since WrestleMania weekend. NXT, I've only watched a couple of episodes. Raw or SmackDown, I've skipped entirely, although I probably would have done that anyway. So my ability to keep up with wrestling has been limited, to say the least. You know, I've tried to keep up with news, and obviously I've watched some of the big shows, but as far as keeping up with it week to week, that's something I haven't been able to do. So now I can, now that this test is off my back, and I can press on forward and get back into my wrestling junkie ways. But I got a few things I want to talk about in this video. I wanted to review the Undertaker Goldberg match from Super Showdown, which I watched literally right after I got home from taking the exam. I went, took the test, passed, said yippee yippee a couple of times, then I came home and literally watched Undertaker vs Goldberg, so I definitely want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about Jon Moxley's in-ring debut for New Japan Pro Wrestling. I watched that match. And I also want to talk a little bit about Dominion, New Japan's big show, which happened this weekend. And I actually got to watch my first real taste of New Japan in a while. So a lot of stuff to talk about. But before I jump into any of that, I do want to give a quick book recommendation. There's a real good chance that most wrestling fans have probably already read this book. It's been out for a while, and Eric Bischoff and Conrad promoted it a lot on their podcast, 83 Weeks. But I just got done reading Nitro by Guy Evans, basically detailing the entire history of WCW during the course of the Monday Night Wars, how they started and ascended to where they got at the time of the Monday Night Wars, how they overtook the WWF for 83 weeks, and then all the factors that led into its downfall, and the ultimate purchase of WCW by WWF. I thought the book was excellent. I really, really liked it. It's one of the few books I've read about professional wrestling that was more of a historical account. Most wrestling books are autobiographies and more about the life of a wrestler more than anything else. But here, it's like we actually get like a nice historical account about the history of WCW and what caused it to succeed and what caused it to ultimately fail. And it was very nice to read this, because most accounts of WCW come from the point of view, oh, let's mock it, and oh, let's make fun of it, and oh, let's take everything that we've heard online and everything that's been said online and just kind of use that to kind of guide the narrative of the book. But what Guy Evans did here, this is a very well-researched book. The people that were interviewed for this thing include former Turner employees, which adds a very interesting, I guess for lack of a better term, like non-wrestling perspective on things, and, covering why everything happened the way they did. And there was also wrestlers that are interviewed. Eric Bischoff is interviewed for this. So it felt like a very fair account of what happened to WCW, and actually does cover the good things and the bad, and just provides a, like I said, a fair historical account, not like the slanted, one-sided narratives that you're going to get out of WWE, where whenever they talk about the Monday Night Wars, they'll say things like, well, the fans preferred our shows, but our shows were better than the WCW's, but they beat us in the ratings. And it's like, wait, what? And saying things like, taking pot shots at things that WCW did and decrying them. So, oh, they stole all our talent. I'm like, well, Vince, you did that in the 80s. It's like, come on, dude. And there's very rarely that opposing perspective. But here, it's completely fair and a very well-researched, well-written account of the history of WCW. It's one of my more favorite wrestling books that I've ever read. Again, looking from the perspective of like wrestling history, I think this was a very important effort. I thought it was very well done, and I was very happy with the final result. I mean, unfortunately, WCW, by its very nature, is one of the great tragedies in professional wrestling history, because losing, I've said it a million times, but losing WCW is the worst thing that ever happened to wrestling, and hopefully that gets remedied with AEW, and we're able to get some balance back in professional wrestling. But I thought the book was very good, and if it's something that interests you, I highly recommend checking it out. I got my copy on Amazon, and you can get it too. So be sure to check it out if you haven't done so already. So now, Taker versus Goldberg. Now, let me make this perfectly clear regarding the Super Showdown show emanating from Saudi Arabia. I had absolutely no interest in watching this whole show. I said, there's no way in holy fuck you are going to get me to watch this entire event. I'm just not going to do it. I haven't followed any of the storylines, and to be perfectly honest, I'm so bored with WWE that making time to watch a 4-hour show that's drenched in controversy given where it's taking place in, I'd rather not deal with it. It's like, look, I don't want to watch it. I have no desire to watch it. If I want to watch anything wrestling related, I'll watch some of the old stuff on the network, or I'll keep up. I'll catch up with New Japan and Ring of Honor and all that stuff. I have no desire to watch this show, except for one thing. And out of sheer morbid curiosity, I wanted to watch Undertaker vs. Goldberg. Not because I was excited to see the match and I was excited to see two legends clash, but because it's like, all right, this is one of those, like, for lack of a better term, dream match pairings from the Monday Night War period that we never got. And here it is, like, I guess you could say 20 years too late, but at the same time, it's like, okay, what the fuck is going to happen in 2019? It's like, are they going to be able to put together something good, or is it going to be a complete shit show? And then I watched it, and it turned out to be a complete shit show. And actually, I was getting text messages while the show was in progress, and a couple of texts suggested to me that Taker versus Goldberg was a dumpster fire, and said that it was one of the worst matches he'd ever seen. And I was like, oh God, well now I have to watch it. I was like, I've got to see what happened here. Oh my God, this is going to be great. And I watched it after getting home on Saturday. And I was like, look, even if it's terrible, it's like, I know the match isn't going to go very long just by the nature of who's in it. So let's see how bad it really was. I think the people that told me it was one of the worst matches of the year and all this other stuff, it's a dumpster fire, it was an abortion, whatever. I really think you guys were underselling it. That match was absolutely atrocious. Oh my God, that was worse than I could have ever imagined. And I'm saying this as a guy, I'm saying this as a guy who's a big Goldberg mark back in the day with the Monday Night Wars period. And whenever they recapture the Goldberg magic, I mark out for it, like the match with Lesnar at WrestleMania 33. And I'm also speaking as somebody who was a huge fan of Undertaker back in the day, and I know you might find that very hard to believe, because pretty much the entire duration of my channel, which is nearing a decade, we're getting close to 9 years into this. Good Lord, what have I done with my life? But throughout the entire duration of my channel, I've been pretty hard on Undertaker, and I've made that no secret. But there was a time, believe it or not, where I was a diehard Undertaker fan, like just dedicated, loved him, loved the gimmick, loved everything about him. Just love The Undertaker. But it really started with when he beat CM Punk for the title in 2009 and basically ruined SmackDown. And I've been souring on Taker more and more since then. And then ever since the streak ended, I've been like, all right, dude, could you just retire already and just put it to rest? And then, sure enough, he's still out there. So there's a part of me that really wants to get on that soapbox and say, look, Undertaker's way too old. I've been saying it for years. Goldberg is way too old, and they were running a risk by putting those two in the ring together, blah, blah, blah. And it was good. It was bound to be a disaster. However, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach here. I don't think the problems with this match could be ascribed to the age of the performers. I think it could be more blamed on the fact that Goldberg went like a freight train into the turnbuckle corner and basically knocked himself the fuck out, busted himself open, and gave himself a concussion. And that was clear as day that negatively impacted the rest of the match because Goldberg couldn't really do anything. He couldn't hit the jackhammer and basically gave him a shitty looking brain buster that looked like it might have killed him. They tried to do the tombstone reversal spot and Goldberg couldn't hold him up and all these other problems. And it's like, I think a lot of it can be chalked up to Goldberg just knocked himself fucking loopy because he dove headfirst into the corner. And that's not the first time Goldberg's done things like that. Even matches that went really well, like the match with DDP at Halloween Havoc 98. Goldberg, when he speared Page, he basically DDT'd himself into the mat. And it's like, good lord, dude, it's like, lighten up a bit, man. It's like, you don't have to like hurl your body head first into danger. It's like, dude, just ease up just a smidge. I mean, we all love Goldberg for his intensity, and that's one of the things that Goldberg brings to the table that helps him to stand out, is his obvious intense nature that's very believable. I thought the promo he cut on SmackDown, which I watched, I thought was one of the more believable WWE promos I've seen in a long time, because it's just Goldberg being Goldberg. And but sometimes, man, it's like, dude, just ease up. Just ease up. So I think all the problems with this match can be chalked up as Goldberg knocked himself the fuck out, and it basically ruined whatever match they had mapped out. Now, maybe the match they had mapped out would have been okay. Maybe the match they had would have turned out all right. And actually, the match started off really well with Goldberg spearing Undertaker out of nowhere a couple of times. It's like, oh my god, he's going to do what he did to Lesnar at Survivor Series. But then, he went right into the corner, and everything just fell apart after that. And it's unfortunate. And I kind of... Again, I want to blame it on their age, but I don't think it was their age in this case. I think it was just one fuck-up that just ruined the entire thing. So, felt bad for both guys. You don't want to go out there and stink up the joint as badly as they did. And oh god, Undertaker looked so disappointed after the match. And I don't think that this was embarrassing from the standpoint, it's like, oh my god, these guys are too old. I think it was more embarrassing that, like, oh god, somebody got knocked out, and it became a bit dangerous. When you look at some of the botches that took place, it was like, Goldberg straight up just couldn't go after he got knocked out, and it's a shame. It's a shame that it happened the way it did. I feel really bad as a Goldberg fan, because I thought his match with Lesnar at WrestleMania 33 was like the perfect send-off for him, and I was like, oh god, please let there never be another Goldberg match, because that was a great match to end on, and now he's got this one. And I think Undertaker, I'm trying to get inside Undertaker's mind here a little bit. I think Taker knows that his last few performances have been lacking, to say the least, and I think he wants to go out on a high note, which is why he keeps coming back. It's like, all right, I'll work with Triple H again. I'll work with DX and Shawn. Maybe they can get something out of me. Maybe... okay, I'll have this match with Goldberg, which will be quick, easy, and to the point, and maybe we can do something cool like he did with Lesnar at WrestleMania. And something just keeps going wrong. It's really unfortunate. And again, I want to blame it on their age. I don't think that was the problem here. I think it was just one fuck-up that just ruined the entire thing. And unfortunately, I don't think, where the age does come into play, I don't think Undertaker is the guy that could be leading the dance at this point if somebody gets knocked out. He's a veteran, and he can handle it better than, say, a rookie could, but also at his age, he's not going to be able... Not like he did with, say, Mick Foley at King of the Ring 98 in their Hell in a Cell match, where he basically had to help hold that match together by the loosest of strings, and he was able to pull it off. Here, I don't know. 20 years later, I don't know if he's capable of doing that anymore. So, it's a shame that it turned out the way it did. Although the end result was a bad match for the ages. Because if you have not seen it yet, go and watch it. It is bad. It is bad. Really, really bad. Again, I kind of did feel sorry for both guys. And you can sense the disappointment just emanating from Taker. But I think I've said enough about this match, and no, I have absolutely no intention of going back and watching the rest of Super Show. a Super Showdown, whatever the fuck it's called. I've heard it was terrible. I've heard the show was just completely boring all the way throughout. I heard Triple H and Randy Orton went half an hour, which I'm like, I have given those two men way too many half hours of my life. They're not getting another one. I'm not watching that match. I'm not doing it. No. Absolutely not. I refuse. So there's, that's that. I'm not watching that match. So, moving on from there, I can now close out with New Japan. I want to talk about Dominion, obviously, but before I do that, I did watch Jon Moxley's in-ring debut where he won the IWGP United States Championship against Juice Robinson. I thought the match was very good. Moxley clearly looks motivated. Some of the stuff they did with the table, some of it was kind of sick. Obviously, it wouldn't break on command, so they ended up doing some sicker stuff with it. I thought it was a very nice, intense match, and Jon Moxley won the title, his first match in. And I'll use this to carry over into what happened at Dominion. Jon Moxley, after winning the opening bout of that pay-per-view, has now announced that he is going to be participating in the G1 Climax, as is Chris Jericho. As is Kenta, who also made his presence felt on Dominion, returning after his run in the WWE. So, a lot of interesting names showing up in the G1 Climax. Now, the G1 Climax is a tournament that I try to keep up with every year. Best of the Super Juniors wasn't able to do it this year, but G1, that's become kind of a thing that I enjoy every year. So now that you've got Moxley and Jericho thrown into the mix, it's like, ooh, okay. Let's see what happens here. And I wonder what the deal is with AEW, if they're going to be allowed to continue in New Japan, or if this is just something they're doing in the interim before AEW starts up in October, I think, sometime this fall. So we'll see, but hopefully Moxley and Jericho continue to add to the product, because Moxley, it's so far so good, and that's for sure. So I'm very curious to see what happens in the G1 Climax moving forward. Now, getting into Dominion itself, Dominion is a show that over the last few years, since I've been regularly watching New Japan and following it, has become one of my more anticipated pay-per-views of the year, because they typically deliver an amazing show with an amazing main event. There was the year they had AJ and Okada in the closer. There were the two Okada-Omega matches, which were some of the best matches I've ever seen. And Dominion's set a pretty high bar. I would say I don't feel like this show quite lived up to it. It's still a very good show, but it's not quite up to the par of the previous Dominions that I had seen. And I think part of that is the main event. And I don't want to sound like I'm knocking on the main event. The main event was Okada versus Jericho, which was a pretty good match. Not great, not like an Okada classic, not a Jericho classic, but just a pretty good match. And this one, comparing it to the other main events, AJ and Okada was something that we waited months and months for. The Omega and Okada had like the best rivalry in wrestling, coming out of their bout at Wrestle Kingdom, and then going into the rematches at Dominion, at the consecutive Dominions. And there was a lot of story, a lot of anticipation built into those. Jericho and Okada, it just kind of felt like they did it just to do it, just to have Okada work with Jericho, so it had like some marquee value, but there wasn't like a really hot story. Not like Alpha versus Omega, where even though that was kind of rushed and something that was quickly thrown onto the Wrestle Kingdom card, the stuff they did to build it up was so intense that it instantly overnight became the most anticipated match in pro wrestling. Here, it was just like, oh, I'm the Painmaker, and okay, as it felt like they were just doing it just to do it. And I don't think anybody honestly thought that Jericho was going to beat Okada either, which it was lacking that dramatic element as well. But with all of that, I thought the match itself was pretty good. It's the typical hard work you expect out of both guys. I just don't think it had like the build-up or the anticipation to kind of elevate it that previous Dominion main events had. Other matches on the show, now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through every single match on the show, but I will say that I liked pretty much every match. I liked the Never Openweight title match. I thought it was a nice, hard-hitting match. I liked, I thought Will Ospreay versus Dragon Lee for the IWGP Junior Championship was amazing. That match was awesome, and it was just wall-to-wall action all the way through, and just the typical crazy stuff you expect out of those guys. Probably my match of the night, if I had to say. I enjoyed the tag title match for what it was, LIJ versus Guerrillas of Destiny. I enjoyed the tag match with Liger and Suzuki and Zack Sabre Jr. and Yoshihashi with the shock upset. That was actually a nice, surprising upset. I kind of expected Yoshihashi to be the one to eat the pinned in that match, but it was actually, they flipped it around and Yoshihashi got a shock win over Zack Sabre Jr. So it'll be interesting to see how Zack Sabre Jr. reacts moving forward. And actually, I also liked the interactions between Liger and Suzuki and their feud that they have going. So that's a nice old person match I'd like to see. It would be interesting if nothing else. I like Tanahashi coming out and saving Okada at the end from Jericho, so we have that match to look forward to at some point. It feels like Jericho's being used to work with all the major heavy hitters in New Japan, and Tanahashi's like the last one. I also kind of like that Tanahashi and Okada have become like at least loose allies at this point. It's like after all the wars that they had, that they've kind of, like Apollo Creed and Rocky Balboa, they found common ground and have united to some degree. So that's pretty cool. What else? Kota Ibushi and Tetsuya Naito had another amazing match for the Intercontinental title, although it had one of the scariest bumps I think I've ever seen in my life, where Kota Ibushi took a German suplex on the apron and clearly landed on his head. And I was like, dude, again, kind of like what I said about Goldberg. It's like, dude, you can, and I've seen Kota do this a lot of times where it's like, dude, you can ease up a little bit. You don't have to hurl your body into danger like that. And that was just a very, very dangerous spot. And I hope I never see anything like that again. But other than that, I thought the match was amazing with Tetsuya winning back the IC title, the belt that he hates. I wonder, like, I keep hoping that Naito, like, wins the IWGP World title at some point, because if that's not the direction with him, like, then what's the point, like, because he needs that. I feel like he needs to get that world title again at some point, just to kind of validate, like, his whole character development, but we'll see, I guess. I guess we'll see what happens with the G1 Climax. That'll be very interesting. But, yeah, so overall, I thought Dominion was a pretty good show, very good show. Just not up to the standard of what I'd typically seen out of past Dominions. Again, maybe that's me looking at the main events of the Dominions and comparing it to this one, which didn't quite live up to previous years. But overall, I still thought it was a really good show, and it's glad to be back into watching New Japan again, that's for sure. So, that is all I have for you now. Again, I will have more videos lined up for you as we continue through the month of June. I've got a few fun ideas planned towards the end of the month, but that is all I have for you right now. So once again, thank you all for watching. Be sure to keep supporting the channel by liking, subscribing, and hitting that little bell so you get notified whenever I post new videos. Be sure to post comments and feedback and all that other good stuff, and follow me on Twitter. The link is in the description box. But I'm signing off here. Thanks again, everybody, and have a good night.